Hi, this is Amy Zavadil, Associate Vice President for CARES, Community Accountability Response and Emergency Services. I want to share with you some information about safe decision making that applies not only here on campus in New York City, but wherever you may be traveling. As I hope you're already aware, there are 4 units under the CARES umbrella: our campus preparedness team, who oversees emergency management and compliance related to fire and life safety, and our non-discrimination office, who I believe you've heard from as you prepare to go abroad. And in person, we have our community safety and security staff, as well as the response team who oversees the non-emergency line at 212-854-3362. As we talk today, there are also resources that all of the members of this team may still be a good resource for you regardless of where you may be traveling. As I mentioned at the beginning, safety is about safe decision making, and I want to reassure you that you already have many of the skills that you need. I hope that you are able to take these skills and make them transferable to whatever environment you may be in. It sometimes helps to think about the 5 elements of safety: physical safety, fire and life safety, structural safety, interpersonal safety, as well as psychosocial safety when you're going to be in a new setting. You've likely heard from many others already about psychosocial considerations going into a new culture and environment. I want to take a minute to talk about things that will be known to you in your current environment, but may be different depending upon where you're traveling. Building codes, fire safety codes, they exist everywhere, but in very different ways. And so things that you may be used to in looking for emergency exits or expecting to receive information about how to safely evacuate, you may need to go out of your way and ask more explicitly from the site that you are at. So thinking about the what ifs, I hope you don't have to make decisions about physical, fire, life, structural, or interpersonal safety while you're away, but it's possible anything could happen, and thinking before you need to know what questions to ask or where to turn is one of the important steps of preparation. Situational awareness is simply knowing what's going on around you. In prevention and preparedness, situational awareness is a decision-making process. You're taking in information, identifying possible issues, hazards, or barriers, and determining response that's appropriate to the situation. We do this all the time, and I want you to think about wherever you're traveling that there may be cultural or contextual factors that may change this a little bit. So thinking about the importance of first being familiar with where you are and familiar with what options exist. It means you might need to ask for clarification or ask for more details at your host site or the organization or institution where you'll be spending most of your time. Some things to think about as you're talking about safety are safety after dark. What are the transportation options? How safe is public transportation? Do you know how to use public transportation, or might it be helpful if your site doesn't already have that resource to ask someone to go with you on your first trip? Think about walking phone escorts. Phone service varies from location to location, but if you have WhatsApp or the ability to make international calls, please don't forget the non-emergency line is available 24 hours a day. And if you didn't have something local wherever you are, you could use that as a resource if you just felt uncomfortable and wanted to hear another voice. That is a resource that is still available to you from afar. Think about how you would secure your belongings and prepare for neighborhood safety depending upon where you are, both for the program that you are participating in, and if you choose to take advantage of additional travels while you are abroad. Thinking about safety before you have a need can be really helpful. Situational awareness is part of that. Bystander skills, sharing information, making sure somebody knows where you'll be and when you'll be returning, programming numbers in your phone and having a communications plan. Who are you reaching out to? And how will people get back in touch with you? What sort of plan do you have with checking in with family or friends with regularity, or setting up a system to check in if you're doing something that you've never done before? So thinking about safety before you have a need is really a big part of preparedness. In general, transportation safety means planning your travels in advance. Know the exit options and safety expectations wherever you are. In the United States, there are lots of compliance obligations of the big red letters and well-lit exits. Not every location abroad will have that, so take a look around at what measures are in place and ask someone who knows before you need to know about emergency exits, or what are the safety options, what are the hours of transportation that may be available. Knowing where employees are located and what is the cultural norm wherever you may be. Is it appropriate to approach a train conductor, or is there another way to seek assistance, as an example? Thinking everywhere you go about how you secure your belongings and taking only what you need to take with you, and also trusting your instincts. Part of that means, coming back to the beginning, plan your travels in advance and know that if you're feeling uncomfortable, what are the options available to you? We talk about subway transportation, of if you're traveling by yourself, to choose a car that's near other people or near the conductor so that you have someone you could speak to. What is the equivalent of that wherever you're going, particularly if there are language differences or cultural differences to take into account? Ask these questions before you have a need. And a good place to start is with other folks who are participating in your study abroad program, or whoever your hosts or host entity may be where you are. Another safety preparation we want to think about wherever you go. Here in the United States, as I mentioned, there are lots of things that are commonplace, so much so that you may not pay a whole lot of attention to where the exit signs and the fire pull stations are. But wherever you are staying, you are going to want to pay attention to what are the exits, how do you look for exit signs or whatever mechanism is in place for your safety, where are the nearest stairs and where do they lead to if you are in a multi-level dwelling or academic building. Know the location of safety equipment and what are the parameters at your location. If you are studying with a program that is affiliated with an American university, you'll likely get a lot of this information. If you are studying abroad in a program that is housed within an international university or college, they may not have the same education, but they will have staff available that you can ask questions. In a worst case scenario or in an emergency setting, what do you need to know about what would be expected of you or what would not be expected of you, so that you know what to imagine and hope that it's not something that you need to use while you're abroad. Again, safety and threat assessment is something that we hope never to have to use, but the more we think about it before any sort of emergency occurs, the easier it is to think in the event of an emergency. So while we don't want to think about it all the time, we do need to think about what if something happened and you needed to escape quickly from the area that you're in, whether it was a situation of violence or a man-made circumstance, or even a natural disaster of a storm that was impacting where you are. Thinking about where are the exits to buildings, what are the nearest ways to get out, and if you come out of the building in a different side than where you typically travel, would you know how to get back to what is familiar to you? Thinking about if you needed to hide in location, a place where you're spending a lot of time, pay attention to if something tragic happened, where would you go for safety? Is there something if you needed to secure a location? How would you go about barricading? And when you think about going into any sort of environment, but particularly large public areas, thinking about where you're going to sit, both for any sort of event, but also thinking about if there were a situation where you needed to secure yourself in place or shelter in place because there was a hurricane, tornado, or tsunami warning and the instructions were to shelter in place, think about where would you go in this space, that you wouldn't want to be in front of windows, you would want to be in an inner part of the room to be more protected. Any sort of active threat, wanting to be out of sight, thinking about does it matter whether you are making noise or not making noise, all of those things. Again, preparedness is about thinking about worst case scenario and hoping we don't ever have to use these skills, but these are the sorts of questions that you want to think about when you're going into a new location and needing to think about taking care of yourself in an environment that is less familiar to you. I also encourage you to think about after incident response, whether it is your own personal situation of you got turned around and it was took longer than you thought to get back to your host location, or your ID was lost or stolen, or if there was a significant incident that happened in the region or specifically impacting you, to think about individual and collective follow-up options. Identify what resources are available at your site. Not every site has a full infrastructure of medical and mental health support, so what might that look like for you? Consider also your individual resources. What is your plan for seeking support from family, friends, or other support from your home providers? And do you have with you all of the numbers and options for how to seek that kind of care should you need it? And when in doubt, don't hesitate to reach out to our campus resources, both online, some of the available national resources that are available virtually, but also, again, the CARES department wants to be available to help connect you with options or take in the information and give an opportunity to just talk through with a familiar voice if you are navigating a difficult circumstance, and being reminded that there are support resources wherever you go. It just may take a different form depending upon the type of program that you're in. You've received information already from our Non-Discrimination and Title IX office, and depending upon the location where you may be participating in your study abroad program, there may or may not be non-discrimination guidelines in place, and it may look completely different or feel quite the same as you have here. We hope that wherever you're going, that you both will feel comfortable and welcome in that environment and will be open to your cultural experience in creating a welcome setting and a respectful setting for the people that you are learning with and from. And we want to make sure that you know, in any educational setting, we do want to continue to provide support should you find that you're experiencing an adverse situation. Please don't forget nondiscrimination@barnard.edu, and Elizabeth Scott Francis and Danielle Hope Cabral are resources to you regardless of where you may be. And another reminder of your bystander skills. I hope at this stage of your time at Barnard and Columbia, you've received information about bystander skills. It's the 5 steps, the decisions that need to happen for help to occur. You need to notice what's happening around you and recognize behavior as problematic and see personal responsibility to do something. You then need to know what to do and actually take action, and that action can come both direct or indirect. A direct response, delegating to ask for help, distracting or delaying a situation, and certainly documenting or reaching out for assistance or to get assistance for others. These skills are universal and are another form of situational awareness. And again, just a reminder, you know about this and use this in your campus experience. This is also a decision-making process that can be useful and helpful wherever you are. You've likely already thought about all of the things that you might take with you as you travel abroad. I hope you've also thought about what happens if something gets taken or lost or stolen along the way. So before you go, please record the serial numbers and model information for all of your technology that you may be taking with you, and store those details in the cloud safely or in records with someone you trust, so that if you do have issues with an item and it gets turned in some cases, what organizations may ask of you is for a serial number, or what is something identifiable about your laptop that may have been turned in. So having that really detailed and unique information of serial numbers is an important part of that. If something can't be relocated, there's also going to be importance for insurance purposes to have that. You've likely already thought about what sorts of things you want to take with you that may have value, and think about that carefully in how you will secure those things. Do you have a good solid lock for your primary bag that you're taking with you? Do you know what the resources will be wherever you're staying so that you can secure valuables with you? And most importantly, thinking about your own identification, a passport and other identification you may have. How and where are you keeping a digital copy of that information? And wherever you will be traveling to, what do you need to have with you at any given time, and will digital copies work for you? And most importantly, recognizing, regardless of where you are, if your passport documentation gets lost or stolen, might you need to go to the embassy, and thinking about that. I know that the International Support Services also have information on that front, and information related to potential visa. But again, part of preparedness is thinking about the things that we don't want to have to deal with and hope we don't have to use those skills. But the importance of having thought about those what ifs can help us bridge the gap if we do misplace or lose an item, that we have a backup or enough information to be able to explore how to get a replacement while you're abroad. We've just scratched the surface on safety, but I hope the big takeaway is twofold. One is you actually have the skills to make safe decisions. We just need to slow down and think differently about them when we're in new locations, and that often begins just by being aware and looking around to take in what may be new or different, and being comfortable enough to ask the questions of what would you do in an emergency at the home where you're staying or the residential space where you are assigned. And what other expectations might be important for you to know. And the second takeaway is a reminder that Community Accountability Response and Emergency Services is a 24-hour service of our non-emergency line. And so in a pinch may be useful to you, as well as the use of our emails for non-discrimination@barnard.edu or our CARES team at barnard.edu. If you find yourself abroad and don't know what else to do, these are staff who are here 24 hours a day, and so it is more likely, with whatever time change you're operating with, that you will get a fairly swift response, certainly potentially outside of the typical response of the other resources that are available to you. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We hope you have a great time traveling, and that this information helps you think a bit about being prepared and asking questions upon arrival wherever you may be headed, so that in the event of any adverse experience, you've at least thought about and are prepared for taking action and follow-up that may be appropriate. I wish you great travels and a great semester abroad.